All right. Hello, hello, hello. This is Tyler James, and I am live with another awesome interview for a creator that you are going to love to connect with here. And this episode, we're going to be talking all about the emotional roller coaster of Kickstarter and going all in on your creative career. And to tackle that topic and a whole lot more, I have with me James Powell. James is the publisher of Ten31 and the creator of House of Fear. And he is a creator who I've known for a while, and I know that you're going to enjoy hearing and learning from him today as well. So welcome back to Comics Launch, James.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me. Since we're going to be talking about the emotional side of things, I just want to go on record and say I'm kind of terrified to be live with you. I don't know, just seeing my face and having you there and asking me questions, it's my heart's racing a little bit. So
well, don't worry. You know, we'll let the pretty art of your latest Kickstarter do a lot of the heavy lifting, and we'll put you and my my mugs down in the corner here.
There we go. That's a very good idea.
And on our watchers. But James, I'm excited to talk to you. Your latest Kickstarter, House of Fear, Rubber and Glue, is live on Kickstarter. And so, I mean, we've got a whole host of fun topics to get into, but just let's connect with the latest House of Fear launch. Give us the lowdown on what you have live on Kickstarter right now, in a way that will be make sense for both creators that and readers and backers that have never heard of House of Fear, as well as what you have for potential returning House of Fear stands.
Yeah, great. It's so House of Fear is a series of standalone comics for kids. It's they're quote unquote scary. They're not anything that's going to give you nightmares. But my goal is always to kind of push the envelope just a little bit so the kids think that they're getting away with something that their parents might not want them to get into. So surprisingly, I when I was writing or making the page, this is our 7th issue, our 5th campaign, which is I'm shocked to say that and to see that. But yeah, it's great. This issue, we're doing something a little bit different with the story. I did some research on middle school and figured out what kids are, in that age bracket are scared of. And I wanted to play, instead of a monster of the month, we're doing something a little bit more serious. We are tackling bullies and how easy it is to kind of get trapped into a prank that gets worse and worse. And so it's kind of like the way I kind of say it, it's as if a younger Stephen King wrote a after school special from the 80s.
Yeah. And, I absolutely love the House of Fear series. I think I have them all. The production value is tremendous. You work with a world-class team, and it was really exciting for me. My wife and I, as you may know, ever since COVID hit, we split up our days, and half the day we watch our 3-year-old and the other half we work. And so, the other day, the day that you launched, I spent the morning with him, log into my computer in the afternoon to work, and my inbox, the first full screen of my inbox is just creators that I know and I respect that have all backed your campaign. So I'm like, well, I guess James has launched his Kickstarter campaign, and I shared that image with you, and I know you.
Yeah, see, I mean that kind of it shook me. I was. I know that the comics community, the Kickstarter community, the comics launch community, everyone supports one another, and it's such an amazing group. But to see that was just, wow. It just kind of took my breath away for a moment. It's like, oh yeah, so maybe I am doing something right. Maybe I am in the, maybe I have found my group. So yeah, that felt great.
And I think it's a testament. You've been in the comics launch community for a long time now. You've been involved in a lot of what we put out, and I think it just shows that, like, being both someone that's helpful and adds value to that community, and also putting out really high quality work. Of course, the creator peers and the comics Kickstarter community is going to rally behind you when you go and launch the next thing. And so it's great to see that. And excited to that at least this latest launch is off to a strong start. But let's sort of dive into the topic of the day, which is the emotional side of starting and publishing your own comics. You reached out to me and sort of pitched me on this as an angle and a topic that you wanted to dive into potentially on this podcast. And and you sort of mentioned how it's not something that gets talked about all that much. And yes, two dudes coming on here talking about our emotions. Surprise, surprise, not all that common. But the reality is, like, the more I continue to do the work that I do with Comics Launch and Comics Launch Pro and the Comics Launch Mastermind, the thing that I spend the most time of my own time working with creators really is on that mental, emotional game. And yes, like, where early on I thought all the value that I could create was in, here's the step-by-step for this, or here's my perfect blueprint for that, or here's my things. When in reality, the things that seem to make the most difference for creators is sometimes walking them off the ledge when their emotions are driving them down a wrong path. And it really is true that, as great as steps and processes and strategies they're worthless if the man in the mirror is just going to sabotage them with self-doubt and all of that other stuff. So I'm actually glad you brought up this topic. And if anyone that's watching this, if that resonates with you at all, please let us know. And if you want to chime in, because we're live, and the advantage of that, we'd love to include others in this conversation. But where do you want to start? Where do you want to start? Why was this a topic that was something that you in particular wanted to explore on Comics Launch?
Well, I think for me, one of the things I want to do for my audience is to start to kind of share that the inside look at some of the emotional hurdles you're going to have to deal with. I've before COVID, I went to some classrooms and talked to students about how comics were made, and we're talking elementary school kids. And I talked to a few teachers and librarians, and they were already saying, "Oh yeah, this student over here is a great artist, but he's kind of given it up because he doesn't have the support at home, or maybe some kids are ridiculing him at school, or there's all these things that are already happening to third and fourth and fifth graders." And at the same time, I do a lot of editing, and kind of like you, one of the things I deal with when I talk to a writer is just that fear-based, or I talk to a creator that has this great look about his art, say, and I have this idea about doing a Kickstarter, and then months later you realize he hasn't done anything, and it's because he's kind of nervous, or he wants it to be perfect first. And I think for me, I want to share that everybody feels that to some degree, and if everybody feels that same way and can find success, then maybe, hey, you can kind of lead by example. So I recently shared how daunting it is just to click launch. This is my 5th campaign, and clicking launch isn't any easier. And if there's someone out there that can hear that and say, "Oh, well, James has had some success and he's still scared about it," maybe I can, take that leap of faith and do it too.
Yeah. And this is something that, again, it doesn't get talked about all that much. And I think for a lot of reasons, right? Like part of what works on Kickstarter and Kickstarter is also similar to sales, in at conventions or other place is that passion, that enthusiasm, and that confidence,
You're correct.
And so talking about all your fears and the emotions and the doubts, it feels like that can potentially be repellent to people. But man, does it resonate with creators. We in a mastermind session last night, you had a creator talk about coming off three or four successful Kickstarters in a row, last one, biggest one yet. But what if the next one doesn't work? It is a battle. It is definitely a battle. I also love the point that you made with little kids, and it reminds me of, that they've done studies or tests where, you walk into a room of kindergartners and ask, hey, how many of you are good artists? Everyone in the class. How many of you are good artists or good at drawing? Everyone in the class raises their hand. By third grade, it's down to about 60%. By sixth grade, it's down to, there's the 5 kids in there that are artists. And by adults or outs of it, I can't draw, or I'm not creative. Yeah. I'm not an artist, etc.
Well, it seems like right now our entire society is built around comparison and competition. You look on TV on Food Network, you're competing to see how good your meal can be. And if you think about that, those shows, it's like, well, there's 5 contestants, and the person that gets chopped first or is off the show first, you consider that person, he's the loser of the day. And you're like, well, he made it to that show, so he must be incredibly amazing as far as being a chef. And, and I worry kind of a little bit, like my son, who's 11 now, and we watch some of those shows together, or any kind of show like that. And I don't like the idea of thinking that you're inferior just because you're not the best.
Right.
And who gets to decide who's best anyway?
Yeah.
Art isn't math. Math 2 + 2 is 4. You're either get that answer or you're not. Art is totally subjective. So
yeah, it's definitely a battle. And so I guess, just using this latest launch that you were at, you're sitting there, you're feeling those feelings before hitting the launch button. How do you actually go and hit that trigger, pull the trigger? Like what goes into your head? How do you get out of that state so that you can actually do the thing that you need to do, rather than, meekly hit the launch button and then curl up in a ball and not look?
So yeah, one of the things I've been doing lately is I try to figure out why I'm scared. Is it the fear of the unknown? Is it the fear of failure? Is it the fear of success even? And I'm trying to teach myself that, like, when I click launch, let's just say that the current campaign does fail. Let's just say that it doesn't reach its goal. I still have learned something from that. It doesn't make me a failure. It just means that the things I tried this time weren't a success, at least to the point of, meeting my funding goal. And I can always go back, reconvene, try to figure out what I did wrong, or plan for a better launch next time. So I think, and I think I've read before, and you probably said it too, about the fear. If you fear something, and I'm not talking about fearing like being scared of heights, so go on this crazy, scary hike. But if you're scared of something, it might be something that you're holding yourself back for no reason. What's the worst that could happen if my Kickstarter fails? I'm not going to die. I'm not going to lose any limbs. I'm not going to be publicly ridiculed. So why not put my work out there and to see what happens? I think, plus I've been trying to tell myself about the benefits, like the rewards will outweigh the possible, the possible outcomes that I'm afraid of. So,
yeah. I mean, it is something that you've got to get over. And the weird thing, and I know another thing that you've sort of battled with over the past few years, and is that concept of imposter syndrome. Like, who am I to be doing X, Y, or Z? And how is that? How has that shown up in your life creatively? And what have you done to tackle that?
Yeah, imposter syndrome is kind of, that's sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. I think it's my brain thinking too much. If someone just comes up to me and asks a question or is interested in my expertise, if I'm in the flow, if I'm feeling myself, I don't even think about it. Other times I'm like, well, there's already a top 10 list of kid comic creators. And then once I start comparing myself to somebody else, that's usually when that imposter syndrome kicks in. Or, a lot of the things that I deal with is just that comparison. The second you're comparing yourself to anybody else, you've kind of already hit this big giant hurdle.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who you're comparing yourself to or for what reason. Once I catch myself doing that, that's when I can take a step back and go, oh, that's where that fear is coming from, or that self-doubt. And I think that it's becoming just more, I'm becoming more self-aware and asking myself, where's this anxiety coming from? Where's this fear coming from? And asking myself, why do I feel this way? And kind of going back to the root source a lot of times. So like with comparison, what I noticed, one of the things I do, and I think you suggest creators do before they launch, is just go check out a whole bunch of other creators' pages, figure out what works for them, what's working in the current day and age of Kickstarter, what might work for you and your audience, and kind of up your game a little bit. But if you're looking at all these other campaigns, I think it just kind of seeps into your subconscious. Oh, look at this person. He's got $40,000 and 900 backers. You start to see that data and those numbers, and you're like, oh, well, I only have 100 backers last time. And it's just subconsciously that stuff builds up. And the next thing you know, you're kind of, like you said, curled up into a ball thinking, I'm a loser before you even click go. And you forget the fact that you've had success before, or you forget all the things that you've done right or done well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the comparisonitis, compare and despair, it's something that definitely, is pretty universal. And I think one of the things that you touched on is in terms of asking yourself questions, getting down to the root. That really is the key to help breaking out of it, because especially when you see a creator 40K or 100K, over 1,000 backers, like just blowing it up, and you feel that in your stomach of, what does this mean about me and all this other stuff? A question I love to ask is like, would you rather no one could achieve that?
Oh yeah, that's great.
Would we be better off if no one could do that? Or, doesn't that sort of go along with like what one man or woman can do, another can as well? And isn't it an absolute blessing and amazing that there's someone out there that's achieved that to show that that's possible for others? So
I love that. That's fantastic. I'm gonna start thinking about that too now. That's a great way to look at it. I think.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think one of the things that I've been doing too is if I start to compare, or I feel jealous, or to some degree, I'll be honest, you're kind of angry a little bit. Just, I don't know if anybody would admit that, but, oh, I have a friend that's having this great success, why does he get so lucky? But it's not luck, obviously. It's dedication and hard work and commitment. But I start to ask myself what it is that I'm jealous about, or what it is that I'm getting wrapped around the axle about. And it usually comes down to something that you want. I want a bigger launch. I want extra 200, 300 backers. I want that bigger audience. And like you said, it's great to switch that up a little bit and say, okay, that's something I want. Well, now I have someone to kind of look up to and say, oh, this is possible. This is something I can emulate, or at least I can start to take some of the things I'm learning from others in the Kickstarter sphere and pull that into my own routines and see which works and what doesn't, and kind of go from there. So,
well, and that really is one of the most powerful questions that does not get asked enough by creators. And that's the question of themselves. And that's the question of, what do you really want? And I think you're absolutely right that when you're feeling that jealousy, you see that stuff, you're feeling that comparison, you could stay in it and make that and stay in that negative feeling of, hey, I see this person up here and I'm not there, and what I'm gonna make that mean about myself. or you can shift to a position of gratitude, like, oh wait, that feeling, that desire, that envy is actually just a compass needle pointing me in a direction of where I want to go. And so many creators like sort of walk through life, and just people in general sort of stroll through life on autopilot, accepting that today is going to be a lot like the day before and tomorrow will be a lot like today, and don't have that crisp like compass pointing them in a crystal clear vision. So to the extent that seeing what somebody else is doing and realizing in your gut and in your body that, hey, I want a piece of that, right? And often it's not the whole thing, right? A lot of times you'll look at someone and it's like, okay, there's that element, but you know, I don't want to swap life partners. I don't want their kids instead of my kids. Like it's just it's not like, you know, you're envious of everything. It's just the little piece that, oh, I want a little bit more of that in my life. So how do we move towards that?
Well, and it's funny too, because growing up, I was taught that doing things for the money is wrong, right? So you should do something because you're passionate about it. For example, I think we're all passionate about making comics. So there's almost like this dichotomy, this inner fight going on. If I look at somebody's Kickstarter and I'm jealous or I want those bigger numbers, but at the same time, what I've learned is that I shouldn't want those bigger numbers. I shouldn't be wanting the money. It's like, well, which is the real me, the person that actually wants to have success financially, or this person that thinks that the finances don't matter. You know, you do art because you love it.
Right.
I know that's not exactly where you were going with that, but I think it's at least some of the messages that I get, or maybe some of these are outdated too, about the starving artist and do it for the love of it. And I believe in that to some degree. But if you're feeling jealousy, maybe it's time to just accept the fact that, you know what, I would love to make a living and have a yacht. I make such a great living making comics. Just go out there and say it. And that's my goal, or at least that's something that I want, and accept that, as opposed to saying, I'm cool with just making it a hobby. I'm cool with just making what I do, and accepting where you are now. I think it's pretty important to say, here I am now, but I do want that next step. I yearn to make that next step. So here's all the steps I'm going to get there. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, there's going back to the imposter syndrome issue. It's always funny to me looking back, is that like I guess I was pretty blessed to never truly let that stop me from, you know, at least putting my stuff out there, you know, and now, you know, I'm pretty happy with my credentials that I've amassed over the years to feel pretty confident in what I do. But if I had waited to have all of those credentials before I started on that road, and before I started, you know, putting stuff out there or sharing my journey and my process, then I would have never, I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be anywhere. And,
right.
And, you know, when I was home a while back, like sort of cleaning out the attic for my mom, I came across a project I did in high school that was basically my end of the year video for humanities. I did like a 40-minute video that was like how to make comics. So I was like, wait, I've been teaching this stuff almost as long as I've been doing it, but it was like how to make comics my way, and
that's fantastic.
And so, you know, removing all of that doubt and all of that, and understanding that, hey, you know, it's all a continuum, and there's always going to be someone that's further along with you or better at some aspect of it, and there's always going to be someone that can learn from you. And
yep, that's true.
And having that heart of a teacher that I know you have, is can really make it worth it. And you know, I'm sure you've seen it where once you get rolling, teaching your classes, seeing the engagement from you know, kids that are learning from you, it's like all of that, you know, who am I to be doing X, Y, or Z goes away, and you're just in that flow.
Yeah, I love the flow. When you're in the flow, nothing matters but what you're working on, and the importance of staying there, I guess. And you don't have a chance to compare yourself to others or doubt yourself, because you're just living your true self in the moment, which, you know, the more in the moment you can be, the more you're living your true self. And you mentioned gratitude a few minutes ago too. And I see that the Facebook user there mentioned it. I'm a big fan of gratitude. You know, I have a list every morning. That's the first thing I do in the morning, is write down what I'm grateful for, typically the day before. And, but I'm sitting here and I have a notebook in front of me that has goals and to-do lists. So I think I'd say our society, but at least the things that I hear and I'm dealing with, as far as what kind of feedback I get, it's all often about your goals or taking a step, you know, improvement. I think it's important for all of us to take a step back and look where we've been. Mm-hmm. If I'm constantly telling myself, oh, well, you know, my next campaign, I want this, and the next one after that, I want this, you forget that where you've come from. Just a few months ago, I had a Kickstarter, and it was a success, and I couldn't have done this current Kickstarter without that one. So I need to slow down, you know, kind of share that gratitude with myself and with others, and say, hey, I'm already losing myself because I'm distracted a little bit with some of the things I'm feeling right now. But that gratitude for me is probably a big game changer. I've been doing that gratitude journal for about 6-8 months now, and it's opened my eyes to all sorts, even the bad things you can be grateful for. You know, I hurt my foot, so which is the worst thing ever. I can't run anymore. So, but at the same time, it's forcing me to slow down. So I've found that I'm grateful for the fact that I'm slowing down, which is something that all of us need to do with so many distractions and so much connectivity and all that stuff. So anyway, I totally forgot what I was talking about at that point. But
well, no, you know, I want to ask you about that, your campaign before this. But I did also want to highlight one of your cool pledges, which I thought is cool on the Kickstarter right now, which is a virtual comics class, and targeting kids. But I'm sure, you know, parents and watching this with their kids might be something that would be helpful. Talk a little bit about that, because what are you teaching in that virtual comics class, which is available on your latest Kickstarter?
So one of the things that I used to do when I went to classrooms and libraries, I would just sit with kids in small groups or a bit larger classrooms and just talk about how comics are made. I was surprised the first few times I did it, how almost like there was a shock in some kids' eyes. There was like, oh, wow, another person made this thing. So, you know, imagine being a third grader and you just read comics and you don't think anything about it. It's just art and exciting stories. But then all of a sudden someone walks in and go, hey, yeah, that comic you're reading, I made it, or a friend of mine made it, or something that's kind of eye-opening. So because of, you know, we can't actually go to classrooms now, and with the pandemic, I wanted to open it up to virtual sessions. And I've had a few, some one-on-one chats with parents and their kids. And it's just so much fun to engage with young artists, young writers, young creators, and just kind of talk about how comics are made and how they can do it, and what I do specifically, and how what I do might be different than what they do. And there's all sorts of questions, and it's just this great back and forth that it's hard not to be just super energized about creating and seeing the next generation coming up. So I hope there's a few backers or a few parents out there who are willing to give that a shot. I know that there was some questions about Zoom back when the pandemic first started, and maybe some parents are worried about that kind of thing with going live. But I'm even willing to do it more one-on-one. If there's young creators out there who want to make comics, it's kind of like what you were saying. I know some of when you were a kid, you were making comics and selling it out your backpack. I would love to sit down with those kids and say, yeah, others have done it. You should do it too. And you can do it with your friends. You can do it by yourself. All you really need is a piece of paper and a pencil, a piece of paper and a crayon, and you're off. So absolutely.
Definitely hope some families that take you up on that. So one of the things that I ask and I encourage creators in the Comics Launch Pro community to do is, after every campaign is up and they've had a little chance to celebrate their victory and take a little bit of a step back, is that slow down so that you can go farther and faster next time. And that's with a process that we run through called a campaign debrief or post-mortem. And so you did that for your last campaign, which was actually a 10-day Kickstarter campaign. So even though you've got one live that's right now, talk a little bit about that 10-day campaign, a little bit different. I know it wasn't originally what you thought your next Kickstarter campaign was going to be, but you made a strategic decision. And so tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's so that campaign, originally I wanted something big. I had before that campaign, I had basically taken, I don't know, a year, maybe even 14, 16 months off of, I just had no online presence. I was overwhelmed. I was just constantly stressed out. So I said, I'm out. So when I came back, I was super excited. I had kept writing House of Fear, and I wanted to have this big giant launch. And actually, it was you in the mastermind group that reminded me. It's like, wait a second, you already have this comic that I had actually printed right before I kind of ran off to the hills and found a cave.
Yeah. And for context, prior to that, your House of Fear series was one that you serialized. And, kind of a cool thing where, like, your first launch was, modest success, a couple $1,000s. And this is an audience that you built from absolute ground up, from scratch. And then you basically doubled it with your next launch, and then, added to it with the next launch. And then the book got picked up for trade for Dark Horse.
Right. Yeah.
But inevitably, that with the overload and everything, you took a hiatus.
Terrible timing for a hiatus, right when Dark Horse publishes your collection. That's not the best idea, but it had to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I came back, here I had this book already printed, and let's reintroduce fans to the series. And one of my goals was to do a campaign that was fun for me. I tried not to be too stressed about it. I wanted to see what it was like to. I certainly didn't think it was going to be a slam dunk. I was worried that even that modest goal wasn't going to happen. But I went into it. I made it a quick starter, and they have the quick starter rules, no marketing. They have certain rules about what you can do and what you can't do. And I'm not going to say that I sat back and just clicked launch and then went on vacation, but my goal was to focus on how I felt. I actually downloaded you have a Kickstarter journal with some questions to ask every day. And I asked myself how I felt. And anytime I got pent up or anxious about it, I kind of, wait a second, this is supposed to be fun. I'm doing this because I enjoy it. And just that subtle mind shift made that actually those 10 days were a blast. And it was over the holidays. I think, it was Black Friday was in there, and it was probably the most, well, at that time it was only 4. So I don't have a whole bunch of campaigns to compare it against, but yeah, it was a fun campaign for me. And I think that came across in my updates and in my emails to my subscribers. And I'm trying to carry that over now, is having that fun And I think you saw it this morning. I woke up and posted this random video. It says, I'll bleach my hair if we can get to $4,000 in 2 days. That was not a plan I had. So I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on, following a very strict plan and just winging it. But this was just me trying to have some fun. And, if some backers look at it and say, yeah, I want to see this guy with a bleached head, let's see what happens. But
yeah. And hey, you can if that works, you can extend it. You get to 6. Do the beard too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I was joking that I could get a whole bunch of kids and like send them different types of beard sculpting I could do, and have just do a poll that says, what kind of trimming am I going to do on my, am I going to have that stash, the trucker stash, or am I going to have big mutton chops? So nice. We'll see. We'll see what happens with the whole bleaching thing first.
Yeah. and so in your post-mortem on the 10-day campaign, one of the benefits of doing shorter campaigns is that the quote unquote Kickstarter dead zone gets shortened, right? Yeah. But you did report that you still had what you considered a 2-day dead zone during your last launch, and you wrote, it was over a weekend where we got only a few backers, felt like a 2-day dead zone, and during the slow weekend, I felt like a total loser despite having reached my funding goal already and knowing I was doing very little promotion. So that's a perfect example of this roller coaster battle with the man in the mirror thing, where I am doing nothing to promote this thing. I'm taking it easy. I'm focusing on that. And yet still there's going to be a voice in my head telling me, you suck. No one loves you. Because in the middle of your campaign, it slows down.
Well, yeah, it's funny how even though my goal is to have fun or to be as stress-free as possible, that still creeps in. It's like, I told myself I'm not going to, oh yeah, that's a whole mess, the way your brain works. But for those 2 days, I was like, wait a second. I would click, no one's backed, still. Oh my God, it's Saturday afternoon and no one's backed in 24 hours. I am terrible at kickstarting, but I think by Monday I had kind of woken up again and said, wait a second. You're not promoting it in any way other than just a couple of posts on Facebook, and you've already met your goal. So
yeah, the books are already printed. You can ship those out immediately.
Yeah, it seems like your brain, if you let it, your brain will stress out or find something you've done wrong. About everything or anything. So.
Yeah. Well, and something you said in your postmortem, which is just good advice when you do find yourself in that inevitable pit of despair, is that's where the gratitude comes in. That's the answer. That's the special sauce to get you out of it. Because as you wrote, it's hard to stay an emotional wreck when you're hyping your team and your backers. When you're not focused on yourself, you're focusing on, on others.
Yeah, and I think at least the way I do it, and I know that there's plenty of other creators who there's one person who does the Kickstarter, and to some degree that can be lonely. You don't really think about it, but you're shouldering all this stuff. You're the person who's doing marketing. You're also the project manager. You're also the graphic designer. You're the person making the videos and all these things, and that's a lot of work for one person. Even if you have a creative team with you or behind you, that's still a lot to shoulder. And I think one of the things I mentioned in that postmortem is to plan something. I don't know if I said fun exactly, but even something like this. This is something that's kind of related to the Kickstarter, but at the same time, it's just me and a friend talking about comics and the comic making process, and that's always fun. I don't know any creators who don't like to talk about those things. So, and I have a couple of things planned next week that may or may not actually help the campaign, and I don't necessarily care if they do, but they'll help me just because I'll be talking to some friends about the things I love to talk about. So
absolutely. And so another sort of concept that I want to talk about, which, the 10-day campaign and one of the reasons that you launched it. But also I think a trap that a lot of creators get into is we often just arbitrarily make more work for ourselves and default to the harder path to go on. And that was what you were originally thinking about doing. You were originally saying, well, I already had this one book that, even though I built my entire House of Fear brand on the back of Kickstarter, and I have this one book that I've never launched on Kickstarter, that's just not good enough to launch a new Kickstarter because I already have it, even though Kickstarter has never seen it. So my next launch has to be a double issue for that and a book that I haven't even started. And it really was the mastermind that was like, whoa, 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 whoa. You could do that, or you could go generate some cash and some funding right now and delight your backers and make a return and raise a couple grand, and then launch the new thing as its own thing a few months later.
Well, there's a little bit of self-doubt in there, right? It's like, what I have now isn't quite good enough, but if I add 20 pages, 30 pages, or if I make it a trade paperback, that's when I'm gonna hit big time. And that kind of goes back to a little bit of fear too. If I don't click launch now, I'm always working and I never have to put myself out there. Like right now I'm out there. So I have to accept that. So, but I had such lofty plans when I first got into that mastermind group. It's like, I'm so glad you guys like woke me up. I mean, I'd probably be still working on that Kickstarter campaign if I had done it the way I had originally planned.
Yeah. I'm glad you made that decision. So one thing I want to talk to you a little bit about, because I think this is the first time we've had an in-depth conversation about it since you sort of made the transition away from what was a job that you'd worked at for a long time to full-time creative. How is that going? What's the best part of making that move? What's the most challenging part? And how you doing?
It's to be totally honest, I had planned, or I started wanting to quit or move over to this full time, but I was probably 8 months to a year early. I hadn't had all my things planned out or my ducks in a row or my finances 100% solid. But I just had the opportunity at work, and I took it. I ran with it. I talked to my family, and my mental well-being was more important than the finances maybe. But and I'll be honest, it took probably 2-3 months before I kind of started to let go of some of that stuff of living in corporate America and underappreciated, overworked kind of mentality. But yeah, I'm probably happier than I've been as an adult. I know everybody could see that and go, well, of course you are. You're doing something you love. But my son's like, you're happier now. He said that the other day. We were just walking to Target or whatever, and he's like, Dad, you seem really happy these days. And I'm just like, yeah, that's because I am. I'm doing, and I'm so grateful to have that opportunity to be able to do what I love for a living. Now, at the same time, there is infinitely more stress because it's all on me to make a little bit of money, grow that audience, improve my skills across the board. So even like going back to this Kickstarter, one of the things that I struggle with is doing those videos. It seems like on Kickstarter these days, I don't know if more and more people from animation or from Hollywood are doing those videos, but when Kickstarter first started, it was just someone talking to the camera, it seemed like. And now there's all these just bells and whistles in those videos. And so when I do what I do, I already know that my videos aren't going to be as good as some of the others, but I do the best I can. And sometimes doing the best I can means more and more time trying to improve those things. And you can't always account for those things you don't know about in your to-do list. So if I write, I'm going to spend 4 hours doing a Kickstarter video, the next thing you know, it's 20 hours in and you're still working on it. So,
Yeah.
and that's, and being the entrepreneur, doing everything, that's still, I'll be honest, that's still kind of a struggle for me, is figuring out how long things are going to take if I've never actually tried to do that thing before.
Absolutely. It's definitely a challenge. And you know, it's one of those things where for me, like, and I guess I'm also curious how you think about it. Like, what's your message to the person that's maybe, you know, just getting started, but holds a lot of resentment towards his or her stable, fine day job, but feels like the day job is standing in the way of everything for them?
You know, it's interesting you say that, because even towards the end, I was grateful for what that job provided me. That stability. I still had some friends at work, obviously, so I got to stay in contact with them every day. I think I would say start looking at it slightly different, about looking at what that job affords you, what kind of things you get to do because of that job. But then at the same time, maybe it's time to start thinking of an exit strategy.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I had an exit strategy, but then suddenly this opportunity came and I jumped at it. If I hadn't have jumped at it, you know, I'd probably be doing that same thing just in, you know, probably midsummer of this year. So yeah, it's tough. My heart goes out to anybody who has one of those soul sucking jobs, and the thing that they want to do becomes a hobby.
Yeah.
And as you know, that you spend a lot of energy and you have some stress and you're doing your job, you get tired. And by the end of the day, suddenly you're like, oh, it's my bedtime. I either decide if I'm going to get a good night's sleep or go make comics. That's not always an easy decision to make. So,
yeah, I mean, that was the toughest thing, or the most surprising thing for me when I made the full-time transition back in 2016, was I assumed that it would be super easy to like double, triple, quadruple my productivity and my output in all areas by moving from day job to day job part-time and working and building, you know, Comics Tribe and Comics Launch and everything else around the side. When in reality, like building the business from side hustle to this has to support your life, your family, in addition to everything else, took so much creativity from me that it was actually harder to create more stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing that, you know, for creators out there, is like, oh, I would be, you know, doing so much more if I could do this full time. It's like, oh, maybe if you don't also want to eat and pay a mortgage and keep your family intact.
Well, it's interesting because I would say, so my writing productivity has gone through the roof. I mean, I think we have 150, 200 pages of House of Fear in the works. And I've written another graphic novel. But at the same time, I say that, I would say I'm lucky to get 80-20 split. 20% of my time is actually doing something creative. That's the writing of the comic scripts or a novel. And it's weird because I had read that stat before. I knew going in that was kind of an expectation, but it's still shocking. It's still, sometimes I'm still surprised at how much time I spend on the business side. Yeah. And I think we've talked about this before too, is one of my struggles is, do I focus on the thing that I'm good at or the thing I need to do? Because sometimes the thing I need to do is something that I keep pushing off because it's new to me.
Yeah.
And I go back and forth on that, to be honest. If I focus on the things I'm good at, maybe that's the right path. Maybe that's where my audience is. But then at the same time, I'm like, yeah, maybe that's not realistic. Maybe I do need to figure out Facebook ads and actually make those a success as opposed to some of the hardships I've had with those in the past.
So there's a really good book called Clockwork. It's by a guy named Mike Michalowicz. It's not a comic focused book or anything, but it is a business focused book. But the idea, like the big aha concept for that book is that as the business owner, you want to be focusing the most of your time and resources on, the most important thing that the business needs to move and the thing that you are best suited to do. However, it doesn't mean that all the other stuff doesn't need to get done. And so,
right.
and a lot of times your main job is to replace yourself in every job in a consecutive number of least valuable or less valuable things that other people could do as well or better with time and training than you can do, so that you are doing the thing where you are most. And it's tough. It's very tough to let go of any of that stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But also
it's big. That's big time. That's one of my biggest hurdles probably, is letting go and knowing that it's time to go seek help.
Yeah.
It's one thing to seek help and, ask a friend for advice. It's totally different to seek help in the way that, okay, I need to actually have you do this thing that I'm struggling with, and I'm going to pay you for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it, like I look back and at all of those decisions, and it's like, whenever I've done that though, whenever I've let go of something, I never take it back on, and the direction keeps moving on, because like what I found is that anything that I'm willing to let go of, I was like, I could do great, but I wasn't doing great. If that was my job, I would have been fired for doing that, because it was something that didn't light me up, tedious, sapped my energy, drained, what I was doing. And so letting it go opened me up to focus on the areas that did light me up, or that, hey, no one else on the planet can do this, because you haven't figured out what it is that you're even trying to do yet.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're saying that, because we talked about being in the zone a little while ago, and I'm finding that if I'm in the zone, that's something that lights me up. That's something I should be focused on. If I'm frustrated and kicking myself and I'm going for a walk and kind of cursing, that's the kind of thing. It's like, well, you're not doing yourself a service by keeping that on your own. Maybe it's time, when you find that frustration, it's time to go find someone else. And that's a debate I think some of us who launch a Kickstarter will have to have. Like, would like my pages are, I'd like to believe that my pages are pretty good, and I've already said my videos are so. Would I have more success if I reached out to someone who makes great videos? Maybe it's time for me to make that leap. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Or the question is, well, it took you 20 hours to do a video. Someone that does videos all day, every day, how long would it take them to make the same or better video?
Yeah, exactly. And because, you have this to-do list in front of you. A lot of times you don't think about or I don't anyway, the cost of your time. So let's just say that there's someone out there who makes videos for 200, 300. I don't even know how much they cost. Well, if I spend 20 hours, that's probably $200 worth of time.
If you're paying yourself less than minimum wage, and
exactly.
States.
But I don't always think that, at least not yet. That's something I'm trying to improve on. But I'll just do this. I'll do this myself. The next thing you know, it's 9 o'clock at night. Your family's missing you, and you're wasting out on all sorts of stuff that you could be doing, with your time, because you're, good at these other things. So.
And look, I mean, I fall to that. Like, I fall for that a lot of times. And sometimes I'll catch it. Like when I catch myself like packing and shipping something, I know why I'm doing it in the moment, and I know why someone else isn't doing it in the moment. but I also remind myself that, you know what I'm doing right now is a $10 an hour job.
That's true. That's true.
By spending time doing this, that will show up in my, in what my revenue generated and what my salary is at the end of the year, because it's impossible to spend most of your day doing $5, $8, $10 an hour jobs, and at the end of the year make a good living. So
yeah, that's true.
It's a tough mentality, especially for, I mean, I was DIY to the core. I was probably 26, 27, 28 years old before anyone did anything for any of my comics besides me. Like I did it all. And so it's very hard to, a lot of us, we pride ourselves in I can figure this out. I can put my head down and grit through it. But the first time, the first time you fulfill a full Kickstarter campaign by packing, shipping, making trips to the post office all yourself, like, great learning lesson. On the sixth time, what lessons are you learning other than this is taking a while? So
it's funny though. I actually I'm not where you are yet, and I don't have you're probably shipping, hundreds and hundreds of comics, so it's different. But I really like packing the comics. I don't know why. I just get into this groove, and it almost feels like I'm connecting with my backers. I know that they're not there with me, but I'll see their name on the packing sheet or as I print out the label, and it just, oh yeah, hey, thanks for backing it. Even if it's just emotional, or not emotional, but energetic. Hey, thanks for backing it. As I pack it up, I say that now, and in a year from now, I would love to have someone else be doing it. Maybe I can hire my son to be doing that with me.
Oh yeah, definitely. Put that child labor to work. Cullen can't get old enough fast enough, at least in that regards, for me. But yeah, no. I mean, like, if you can make that into something that lights you up versus, again, drains you and prevents you from launching the next one in a timely fashion, and it does scale. It's a difference between you can knock out 50 of a few configurations of products. You can knock out 50 packages in an afternoon if you had to.
Yeah, true.
David Pepos, who did the OZ, I think he had 900 packages to deliver, and it shut him down for a month. Just the bagging and boarding alone took a week. So,
well, and that's not necessarily the packaging, but in the corporate world, you're surrounded by other people who are working on the same project. They get paid to meet deadlines, and so at doing this all ourselves, you have to ask yourself, is my time best served doing this? If not, you're gonna have to spend a lot more time to go find someone who can do it.
Yeah. In
the corporate world, I spend 15 minutes on it. I'm struggling. I call someone. I send an email. That person's job is to come help me. So that's another cost you have to think about. Well, now I got to go do research and figure out who to help, who to find. I got to do doing some interviews. So it's just, it's all sorts of juggling happening and figuring out what you're best at and whether or not your time's best served doing that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob Moltari's pro tip is he paid his sons in his Lego figures to stuff and bag his boards.
That's awesome.
Nice one. So one of the things that I know in making the transition to full-time self-employed creative is that you have been doing some work with other creators in an editing capacity, and that is one of the things that you have had to be a part of what you're doing. Talk a little bit about who you work with and how you can help creators.
I love editing. I love working with writers, other creators, and I would go so far as saying I'm a better editor than I am a writer. I love helping a writer find the story he or she wants to write. Kind of asking those questions to, what are you trying to get at? What's your point with this story? Not necessarily a moral, but what message are you sending, or what's, this might sound silly, but what's inside your heart that you're trying to teach people or to get out into the world? And a lot of people, a lot of writers haven't asked that yet. So when I don't just read a script and make some notes and send it off. I like to work with the creators and ask those questions. And I like to, as quickly as I can, figure out where they are, how far along they are in their writing career, and their, I don't want to say quality, but kind of figure out where they are with scripts and comics, and try to get them one step to the next step and make them a better writer, as opposed to just making this one script better. I want to make them better, and start asking some more involved questions. I love to write. Don't get me wrong. I love House of Fear and some of the other things I've been writing. But if it turned out that I edited all day and I could make that a career, I would have no problem with that either. I love it. It's fantastic.
So are you open to, do you have space to work with creators, and if creators are potentially interested in working with you, what's the best time to reach out and connect with you about that?
I've had people reach out, email or on Facebook or Instagram. And I'm always open. I don't want to say that, I can drop everything tomorrow and read a script, but I will always find a way to put a writer on my schedule, assuming that writer isn't, under some kind of time constraint that, needs to be done this weekend. But yeah, and I've worked with creators who I just sit down and, read a pitch, or have a Zoom session where we just talk about the story that they want to tell and how best to make that happen. It kind of goes back to that teacher in me, I guess, and wanting to share that love of writing and storytelling, and helping a writer just take those next steps.
Well, awesome, James. I'm really excited that there's another House of Fear coming. And I really do appreciate having this conversation with you, because I think we touched on a lot of things that creators, if they haven't faced already, they will face at some point, and maybe over and over again.
I appreciate you having me on. It's funny, my wife and I, she always makes fun of me because I joke sometimes that I wish whenever anybody went to like a dinner party or to a class, your little name tag underneath it was like your biggest issue, your biggest emotional hurdle, because everybody, we don't talk about it because we're trying to be, so we show our confidence, we show our strength. And if we all knew that everybody was kind of dealing with some sort of self-doubt or imposter syndrome or whatever, I personally think that, oh, wow, look at you. You have self-doubt too. Let's go talk about it. Yeah, we're awesome.
Yeah, so, I mean, it connects us, and together we can kind of work through it, and sometimes just knowing and realizing that you're not alone in this in the struggle can make you, and that creators like yourself can have success while still battling these various demons.
Definitely.
I think can shine. It can be very hopeful to a lot of creators out there. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and good luck.
Thanks for having me
with the rest of this launch. And we can't wait to see what's next coming from you.
Yeah, hopefully next time I see you, I'll have bleached hair.
Yeah,
we'll see,
everybody. You want to see James doing his.
I do still have some hair up there, so it'll be hopefully white or bleached
best
blonde.
Circa 2000 Slim Shady.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
All right. See you guys later. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.